to recover from the sadness of the Boston Celtics winning their 18th world championship.
Yeah, it's a very sad, sad day. I turned it off at halftime. I was not sitting there thinking they were going to win that. Mavericks were going to come back and win that game, and clearly I was right. I think you know. Listen, kudos to the Celtics and winning it all. And we could sit here and we could talk about, oh, they got lucky with injuries, and we've said that many times on the podcast. But you can only play who you scheduled to play against. You can only play who you drew. Okay. Once again, if the Cavs don't punt that game and they play, the Cavs, the Cavs were the best, their best opponent injured. Okay, like, and they didn't have Jared Allen, they didn't have Donovan Mitchell. They played the best out of any team that played against the Celtics. Maybe we don't dismantle this, Mike. I mean, I don't really want to spend a lot of time on the Cavs here, but I think the only real answer here is to not let the Celtics go back to back. Like, is to bring this guy back to Cleveland.
Oh,
He's going to be angry about this Celtics victory. He's going to be fuming. Okay, come and stop the Celtics' reign, LeBron. Come back to Cleveland. Join that starting four. Make it happen. Listen, I'll actually, what I think is probably going to happen now is he's going to be more motivated to stay as a Laker, because now he wants to win the Lakers an 18th championship to tie the Celtics. Right? That's probably the more likely scenario here. I'm wishful
yes, I
thinking
would
still.
agree. It
Wish.
feels like that could be the case.
Anyways, the bottom line is the Celtics, they won. Luca played terrible. I mean, he is what he. I mean, he was clearly hurt. Kyrie was a no show. The role players were not good yesterday. I mean, there was, I don't know, was there anything that was good yesterday? Did they do
Not
anything?
really. I mean, they didn't. No, I mean they didn't shoot the ball well. They they lost that game honestly in the first 6 minutes of the game when Boston came out slow, and unfortunately Dallas came out equally slow. And had Dallas taken advantage, I think, of that first 6 minutes of the game yesterday, they would have potentially put themselves in position to have the Celtics and their fans start to get a little bit nervous, and then maybe good things could have happened, but they just were not up to the task. And as you said with Luca, it's hard to really. I don't know. He's probably just in my own mind. He's maybe one of the most polarizing players for me that I can remember watching, maybe in my entire life. Just in terms of there are so many things he does that I love, in terms of the way he plays at his pace and nobody really knocks him off his pace. The passes, which we've cited numerous times during this playoff run, that just completely come out of nowhere. He had the one in the game last night. I think it was well after the game was decided. It may have even been in the second half where he drove in and kind of threw the ball over his head. But again, it hits his teammate right in the shooting pocket. It's just unbelievable the passes that he throws. And obviously, he's a tremendously gifted offensive player. And I don't know how much to attribute his seeming lack of effort on the defensive end of the floor and getting after loose balls and some of the other things that went on last night. I don't know how much to attribute to injury and the load that he's carrying offensively versus his conditioning and just his will to get after it on the defensive end of the floor and give everything he has, possession after possession after possession. I mean, again, there's a lot of factors that go into that, as I just stated, but I expected him to be better. And look, he carried, I guess, along with Kyrie to some degree, but the rest of that roster is not really very good, is the honest truth. And when you look back at this playoff run and you think about how close Oklahoma City was to being able to beat them. And then you think about how hot PJ Washington was from three in that series. And then really he's done, I don't want to say nothing, but he's done next to nothing in the subsequent two series against Minnesota and against the Celtics. So where are you at on Luka? I know that for a long time he was your favorite player. And I don't know, I was disappointed if you had gone into the series and you come out at the other end of it. I don't think that we got the best version of Luka. I just don't know where to attribute the blame for that. Is it injury? Is it conditioning? Is it his mentality? Is it the Celtics defense? I don't
All of
know.
the above, Mike. How about
Yeah,
that? Can we
yeah,
just say it's a mixture, it's a combination, it's a confluence of issues. Okay, it was a lot of things going on there. Listen, Luca clearly didn't look right for even like if you think back 2 series ago, he wasn't looking good. Like, and I think part of it's conditioning, part of it's injury. You know how much he works in the off season is a question mark, right? Did you see the video of Jokic today?
no,
playing 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 in his home country with a bunch of guys who are not even close to his ability level, and he just I don't know how good I don't know how good that is training wise for playing in the NBA. Now, granted, he what, 2-time MVP, 3-time MVP, whatever he is,
three
three-time
time.
MVP. He can do what the heck he wants because clearly he knows what he's doing. But like I don't know. And the other thing is like obviously there's another thing coming up here with the Olympics, and Luca's definitely going to play in the Olympics, right? There's no way he's sitting out. So they're in the Olympics, right? I mean, I guess I don't
Yes,
know. They're
they
they're in,
are. They
is
are. They
is
are.
Jokic is playing too? Is Jokic playing? I'm assuming.
Jokic is supposed to be playing. He is supposed to be playing for Serbia. Yes.
So maybe he's just getting his workout in with a bunch of guys who he was on an outdoor court playing 3-on-3. It's a great. I'll see if I can find the video. I'll send it to you. It's pretty hilarious. Um, anyways, I think it's a confluence of things. I don't know where I stand on like. Listen, 3 years ago I was a huge Luka Doncic fan. I was a huge Luka. Like you would watch him and you watch him play. He plays really really well for, you know, the first and it's seemingly the first and second quarter he plays well, and then that third and fourth quarter he's not the player in the third and the fourth quarter. And I mean, I was texting with my buddy game one. I mean, remember game one, Luka was on fire at the start of the game. And then all of a sudden, it was just like he completely just fell apart. And obviously, not having Kyrie playing as well as Kyrie could have played. I mean, Kyrie was terrible in every Boston game. Like when they were in Boston, he was terrible. Um, I don't know. It just, I think if Dallas had Jalen Brunson, they would be better off, maybe. And once again, I don't know the answer to that because maybe Jalen Brunson doesn't grow and take the next step if he's next to Luka. I don't know the answer to that question. I mean, he was still really good that last season he was in Dallas. And once again, do I think? I mean, I don't know. Kyrie's going to be a Hall of Famer, right? We agree with that statement. I'm not
Yes.
there with Jalen Brunson yet. Okay, he's only played really 2 good seasons. I'm not. Yeah, I'm not there with him yet. Kyrie's a Hall of Famer, so I'm not saying that Brunson is a better player than Kyrie, but I think in this series, maybe a healthy Brunson is at this stage in his career is better. I don't know because Kyrie once again Kyrie had a great games in the last series. Like he played well in the last series. So I don't know. I think this goes back to 2018 Cavs when like LeBron was trying to carry a roster that was pitiful. I mean, Kevin Love was past his, like this is probably the worst losing team in the finals since that 2018 Cavs team. If I had, well, you're shaking your head, so I think you agree with me on that. Like,
I do.
I think there's a lot of tangentially related things. The only difference here is LeBron was 35 at that time or 34 at that time, right? And Luka's way younger, so he should theoretically not be is broken down. And I don't know. I know I kind of went off a little bit all over the place there, but I don't know where I'm at, Mike. Here's what I'm gonna say. I'm still a Luka fan. I still think that he is one of the best players in the NBA. I think he needs to want it more, and maybe this will whet his appetite. And it's sad that he has to have an experience like this to whet his appetite, to get into better shape, to, once again, it could have been that the injury was so bad that he couldn't do anything, and we're just relating it to his, being out of shape, and it was really his injury that was hurting him. So I'm going to reserve judgment, but if we see this again in the postseason, then I'm going to be more critical. I mean, think of it this way. How many times have we been critical of the Boston Celtics over the last 5-6 years? Right?
Innumerable. Too many to count.
Too many to count, okay? And here they are. They finally won the championship. However we feel about it, or however they got there, they won the championship. This is Dallas's first chance with this roster, or this group of people, with Luka getting to experience it. So I'm not going to be overly critical. Am I still going to be a little bit skeptical about some things? Definitely, for sure. But I think we have to give them like a chance to come back. I mean, we've got to give them a chance. Listen, think of it this way. 2011, right? 2012. What happened? KD, Russell Westbrook. Who am I forgetting?
James Harden.
James Harden, that Thunder roster goes to the NBA Finals against LeBron and company. They never got there again. The band got broken up. Okay. This roster is nowhere near this. They had two people. I'm reserving judgment in the future of the Mavericks. We can have this at the end of next season. If the Mavericks don't get to the finals again, or if the Mavericks have some sort of situation where, I mean, who knows what Kyrie's going to do? He could go somewhere else, right? This year, like he could totally bail. Well, I liked what I saw with him after the game. I don't know if you saw him. He stayed on the floor and like gave every single Mavericks person as they were walking off like the due respect and whatever. And I know that's been more of the Kyrie philosophy this year and last year. He's been way more like leader role, not completely crazy situation. I liked what I saw there. I think he's been very positive about his experience in Dallas. I think he's probably going to stay unless something crazy happens. But who knows what the roster is going to look like next year? I think they obviously have to change something and rebuild and reload. Look at the Celtics last year. They traded their heart and soul in Marcus Smart. However good basketball player he is, Marcus Smart was the heart and soul of that team. And they traded him because they knew they needed to be aggressive and make their team better. Does Dallas have the parts to put something together? I don't know. And I don't know if they have the cap space and all that situation. But if they can be aggressive and improve their roster, then I give them a shot. The other problem that they have is they're in the West. I mean, let's be honest. There's like 6 teams in the West. I mean, they're in a much tougher conference. If they were in the East, then we could have this like they're for sure shoo-ins. But they could easily next year come back, be the 6 seed, 5 seed, and lose in the first round. I mean, I think their floor is much lower than the other teams in the West. I think, in my opinion, like the top teams, like their floor is much lower. I think their ceiling's not quite as high either. Like, you just think about it. You got Minnesota. I mean, even the Clippers. And now they've got Jeff Van Gundy on their coaching roster. That's good. He'll tell some good stories. You got Denver, obviously. You've got I said Minnesota, Denver, the Clippers. I mean, I'll throw the Lakers.
OKC.
OKC. I'll throw the Lakers in there. I mean, they're not going away if LeBron stays there. Like they're not going away. Are they going to be? I don't know, title contenders. I'm not, but they're not an easy
Oh yeah,
out.
I'll tell you. I'll tell you how Dallas improves their roster, man. Hold up that jersey that you had. Hold that thing up.
Well, this thing. I mean, it
Yeah, there you go.
blue.
There you go.
Blue. What about Paul?
Put LeBron on the LeBron on the Mavericks.
What about Paul George?
I think my understanding is that LeBron would have to take a little bit of a hit to go to Dallas. But is LeBron going to ring chase, or is LeBron just going to try to continue to build in LA? I mean, if he's going to ring chase, he's got lots of options of places he can go.
Come on. There's only one place he should go if he's going to ring chase, Mike. The Cavs. There's no way. Come on. The Cavs.
Team that lost in the first round. Team that lost in the first round.
It's different though. The path. It's the same thing that happened in those 8 years he went to the finals. The path of least resistance, Mike.
Philly.
That's the other. Okay, the Cavs and the Philly are the two options. Except Embiid's going to be hurt.
What? Oh, he's not. This guy has a great track record.
Did you see what he did?
Did you see
what he did when he was walking off the set?
No, I mean I just heard the comments. I don't know what he's.
He may have scratched a certain area of his body and then touched the trophy.
No, that's not good. That's not a win. That's not a win for anybody. Let's leave that there. Okay, can I ask you? Here's my biggest question coming out of this series, and I know that we're kind of focused around lots of other ancillary things rather than the Boston championship, and it is great for the Celtics organization, obviously for Jason Tatum and
it's all
Jaylen
great for
Brown.
Bill Simmons. Did you see the picture he posted? Did you see the picture?
No, I didn't see it.
Him and his dad, and at this game with the confetti going off.
Oh, so sweet.
I'm
But look, I mean, it's well known that neither you or I are big fans of the Celtics, but as you said, they did get it done. I think, though, for me, the big question coming out of the series, and I asked you going into the last segment here, whether or not, what you thought Luka, what do you attribute the struggles that he had in the finals? And now we're talking about a guy who struggles, who I don't know what his final stats were in the finals, but he probably averaged, I don't know, 28, 8 and 8, somewhere in there. So we're talking about a guy who put up, again, amazing stats in the finals. But I think the question for me is this a turning point? It should be a turning point for him, but is it a turning point? Do you think that when we come back next fall, Luka's A, in better shape, and B, has decided that the constant whining and complaining to the officials, I don't think he's ever going to completely eradicate that from his game, but where it is now of complaining, and then not only the complaining itself, but then also the fact that the complaining to officials distracts him from getting back and playing defense and helping his team in that way. Is it a turning point? Do you think we see a different Luka? Was losing this finals the way they lost it? To me, the lessons that he should be learning from this loss are clear. One, I've got to be in better condition so that I can play both ends of the floor for 42 or 44 minutes. That's number one. Now, look, maybe he's hurt. Maybe the injuries just have debilitated him enough to the point where we should be praising him for the miraculous play that he has when he's, when he's suffering through these different injuries. But I think the lessons he has to learn is I got to be in better condition, number one. And number two, I have to stop complaining to the officials on every single play. And I've got to focus on getting back on defense, helping my team if I miss a shot, not on trying to convince the ref that I got fouled every single time I shoot the ball. So my question to you is, do you think that this is a turning point? It should be, but do you think next year we see a changed Luka for the better. With the
No,
caveat again that this dude is
no,
incredible. I
no,
agree with you.
no.
I agree
Listen,
with you.
do we see a change Draymond Green when he went to counseling because he was whacking people and acting like an idiot? Do we see a change?
No.
No. And he went to counseling supposedly. Unless Luca's going to counseling, I mean, he's a
You are who
whiner.
you are. You are who
I
you
will say
are.
that's the one thing with him that I'm very disappointed in because I feel like when he came into the league, he wasn't doing that much. And maybe I'm wrong, but I feel the first and second years in the NBA that I ever really thought about him whining and complaining. And I could be wrong. I'm sure there's documentation of him whining, but I don't know what it is and why, but I don't know if it's the European soccer influence of I mean every single thing in soccer is we're gonna flop on the ground and we're gonna whine and complain and you know cry like about it. Like I don't know. I don't know if that's it, Mike, but I don't see a change coming. I think he's the same.
So that being said, then this finals to me becomes even more disappointing if he doesn't learn from it. History would tell us that in most cases throughout the history of the league that guys who lose end up coming back and figuring things out. Now sometimes maybe they get a new set of teammates, maybe sometimes they have growth by the other players and maybe it's not so much them, but the history tells us that you bang your head against the wall, you bang your head against the wall, you come back, you work harder, you do something different, you get in the best shape of your life, you add something to your game, and all of a sudden you're able to get to the top of the mountain. And for Luka, he's now been to the Western Conference Finals 2 years ago, now the NBA Finals this year. And to me, as a superstar player, it feels like the lessons that he needs to learn are so obvious that it's not like people haven't talked to him about his conditioning and his complaining to the officials. I'm sure that people are talking to him all the time, trying to get him to A, get in better condition and B, stay off the refs. But it feels like great players in the past would have made that next step and taken this loss, watch Boston celebrate, watch the confetti come down and say, I'm not going to let this happen again. And if I'm in this position again, I'm going to be at my very best, even if whatever the circumstances, my team's not as good, I'm injured. I just have to be better. The greatest players kind of look inward of, hey, what can I do to make sure that this doesn't happen to me? And I'd like to think that Luke is going to make that change, but man, I'm not sure. He's had so much success to this point, obviously not winning an NBA championship, but other than that, the individual accolades that he has piled up at his age in terms of all-star appearances, first team all NBA, doesn't have an MVP yet, but I think that it's safe to say that at some point in his career that that's probably coming when you're throwing up a regular season 34 9-9 at 25 years old. Pretty good chance that that's not going to be your best statistical season. And so I think there's still an MVP year looming for Luka, but man, I wish he would just
I don't
internalize
know. Okay, so
what happened
I'm
to him
gonna
in this
push back
series.
on that, Mike.
Okay,
I don't see there's any way that he wins an MVP.
why not?
Well, look at the rest of the players in the league. I mean, is he really going to win an MVP over Jokic or Giannis or Anthony Edwards or? I mean, I
Well,
don't know.
explain to me why not. I'm not saying it's not possible that he never wins one. It's certainly possible that he never wins one. But what would make you think that he's not in the category
Who,
of the other guys who are going to be
who's voting on the MVP,
perceived
Mike?
media?
Do the media like the whining good players?
No, but the media voted Joel Embiid MVP.
Well, that was dumb.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
I said
Media does dumb
I want
things all the time.
I listen. I just don't know. I think I find it hard to believe that he's going to win. I mean, do you see this as the roster is current? Do you see the Dallas Mavericks having one of the best 2 or 3 records in the NBA? Because
Well, see, okay, now you're now,
that typically
now
is
you're
what it's.
answering the question.
Oh, thanks.
Now you're answering.
I
Now
got
you're
there.
answering. Now you're
I mean,
now you're answering the question, right?
who's the
The
only
answer
MVP,
to the
Mike? Who's the only MVP that's ever won an MVP that didn't do that? It has to be Russell Westbrook, right? In the last 10 years.
in the last 15 or 20 years, yeah, Westbrook is the only guy that approached that in terms of being
Win.
an MVP on a team that was not at the top of his conference. So I think if you're going to make an argument that Luka's not going to win an MVP, you can't necessarily make it on a purely individual statistical basis because on an individual statistical basis, Luka is right there with or above anybody that you want to mention at this point who you consider to be an MVP front runner. So that being said, what would hold him back? And to me, I think it's the team, right? It's the team record. And Luka would just have to throw up, not that he didn't an incredible season this year, but he would have to throw up an even more incredible season and maybe have it be a down year for MVP candidates. If you're talking about a team that's going to finish fourth, fifth, sixth in the standings, you better be statistically such an anomaly that the voters just don't have any other way to turn. And so obviously winning an MVP is very, very difficult. And there are some great players at the top of the league right now who have won multiple MVPs. Jokic has won 3, Giannis has won 2. So there are lots of other good candidates. But if you're going to exclude Luka, it's not because of his own personal achievements. It's because you don't believe in the Mavericks roster. The problem with Dallas's roster is they just don't have much else that they can trade out. All their draft picks, I believe, have been traded out the door. They don't really have much in the way of flexibility in terms of if they let a guy walk to be able to replace him. They just don't have a lot of avenues to be able to go to pursue to find the type of talent that you might need. Now, they do have the potential for Derek Lively becoming a much, much, much better version of what he was in this playoff run, which was pretty darn good. So when you're talking about a 19-year-old guy, you got to believe that Derek Lively is going to get to be better at the things that he already does. And if he continues to progress, that's a piece that develops nicely into something that you can get improvement in your roster. But other than that, I mean, I don't know who. I guess you got Josh Green and Jaden Hardy, and those guys are relatively young, so maybe they can get better. Kyrie at this point, not getting better. TJ Washington, he had his one series against Oklahoma City, which, by the way, if you're an Oklahoma City fan, you got to be like, oh man, this is like crazy. Kind of when Grant Williams knocks down a bunch of threes for the Celtics to beat
Which, by the way, what a
Milwaukee.
joke! What a joke!
What's
Why
that?
is he? Why is he partying in the locker room with the Celtics? Get out of here! Come on,
Nah, man,
man.
he's a Celtic. He's a
They
Celtic for life.
they traded. They didn't. They traded him to Dallas, and then Dallas got rid of him, sent him to Charlotte, and he's at the game celebrating with the Celtics. Give me a break, dude. You got cut. You got sent away by 2 teams. Come on, man. Come on, man. That's like Kendrick Perkins saying, "Carry the hell on, Celtics, boss, Celtics." Get out of here, Kendrick Perkins. Nonsense. Get out of here. I'm sorry. Get over.
Yeah. All right. So look, I mean, it comes down to Luca carried a roster that wasn't really very good. Kyrie was very up and down throughout the postseason. Some games he was good, other games he was not. In order to be able to be competitive in this Boston series, they needed Kyrie to be at his absolute best, and he wasn't. He just wasn't. He was never at a spot where you felt like, oh man, this guy, he's ready to break out and have a huge series. He just never got there. I pulled up the stats for the series just because I was curious. And look, I think when you look at we're talking about Luka and we're talking about how again disappointed we are, which tells you how high the bar is because Luka averaged 29, almost 9, and almost 6 assists. But the thing is that all those numbers are down from his regular season numbers. I mean, the points are down 4 or 5 points. Rebounds and assists are down. Well, assists are down big time. Assists are down like 4, and rebounds are down maybe one board a game. But Luka shot 24% from three. Kyrie shot 27% from three. I mean, if you just said that coming into the series, I mean, you just said Dallas has absolutely zero chance of winning this series with those two guys shooting the ball that poorly from three. And then Luka was terrible from the line, too. He only shot 58% from the line. He reminds me a lot of LeBron at the free throw line, a lot. In that when he goes up there, I don't feel any confidence whatsoever that in a big spot that he's going to knock him down. Do you? I mean, in no way, shape, or form do I feel like he inspires confidence at the free throw line.
Yeah, I agree. I'm less confident with a few other players, but it just, especially just the way it's bizarre because when he shoots a three, I think it's going in, but when he shoots a free throw, I don't feel good at all.
Right. That's exactly right. That is 100% correct. I couldn't agree more.
So I don't know. I I don't have much. I think we've said it all about the Mavericks. Celtics wise, do you want to add it? I mean, I know we spent a lot of this time talking about that. I mean, Jalen
It just
Brown,
flips
did
that.
he deserve the
It flips
MVP or
that.
did Jason Tatum deserve the MVP, or is it really a coin flip?
Tatum Tatum didn't deserve it. I'm not so sure I would have given it to Jalen Brown either.
Who would you give it to? True Holiday?
True Holiday. I mean, offensively, his statistics obviously don't match up to Tatum and Brown, but
He chased
and it's
Kyrie
hard to
and Luca the whole
yeah,
series.
it's hard to give it to an auxiliary player because whenever we say, well, Holiday was everywhere and he was finishing around the rim and he had some great cuts and whatever, which is all
It's not
fine and
hard to
it's
give it to the
true.
auxiliary player. They did in 2015 when LeBron should have won even though they lost.
I agree. I agree. But what I'm saying is that even though Drew Holiday was tremendously impactful, obviously on the defensive end, but on the offensive end, what he was able to do, so much of what made Drew Holiday effective in this series was the fact that he was not the on ball creator. It was still White, Tatum, or Brown breaking down the defense, creating advantages, getting Dallas into rotation, and then all of a sudden, Drew Holiday cuts and he's wide open for a layup, or Drew Holiday gets the ball underneath with the guy on his back, which means almost automatically he's going to score, or Drew Holiday knocks down a three. And all of those things he was tremendously effective at, but he's still not the straw that stirs the drink. And I think that when you look at the difference between Tatum and Brown, I guess the one solace I'll take as a anti-Celtics fan is that Tatum didn't win the Finals MVP, which I guess then that puts a little stain on his overall record as far as how he's remembered historically. Which again, it's not like I have some personal vendetta against Jason Tatum. I'm just not a big fan of his. So uh, to me, I guess Jalen Brown makes sense from a standpoint of at least he is a driving force in what Boston is trying to do rather than a ancillary piece like Drew Holiday who kind of plays off of the main people. It is interesting though when you think about Drew Holiday and the championship that he won with Milwaukee and where he was cast as I guess in the championship season when Middleton was out, he was the number 3. Or I mean, when Middleton was playing, he was the number 3. And that was probably the right role for him. And then you think last year when Middleton was out and Holiday was basically your number 2, he's probably underqualified for being your number two, but he was wildly overqualified for being your, I don't know, number four or number five offensive option on the Celtics. And I think that's what made the Celtics so difficult for Dallas to deal with is they always have five guys on the floor who are capable of doing anything offensively that you would want them to do at any given moment. And that's regardless of whether you have Porzingis or Horford as your five man. Clearly, Porzingis gives you deeper range on the three. He gives you more rim protection on the defensive end of the floor. But as far as a guy who can do everything, now maybe he can't do it as well or as fast as he used to, but Al Horford can still shoot threes. Al Horford can still put the ball on the floor when necessary. Al Horford is still a threat. He's not a guy that you can just completely ignore. And then obviously the other four guys are all talented offensive players that do lots of things. And so when you're trying to figure out how do you defend this team, it's really difficult to say you're going to send two at the ball or you're going to rotate here or you're going to switch this or because every one of those guys is skilled in some way. Now, they're not A plus guys with the ball the way Luka is. I mean, you're never going to mistake Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown coming off a screen and their decision making. You're never going to mistake that for what Luka does. But when you put all five of those guys who can all pass, all dribble, all shoot, and you put those five guys on the floor at the same time, it makes it really, really, really difficult. So I think from my standpoint, I'm glad Brown won it and not Tatum. But I think Boston certainly deserved this NBA championship. As you said off the top, there's no way you can denigrate their run to the finals and talk about all the injuries. You can look back through history and see all the teams that made it to the NBA finals and eventually won a championship that benefited from
2015, the
injuries.
Warriors.
I mean, they benefited from injury, right? I mean, Kyrie goes down that year, Kevin Love is down, and it happens. I mean, that's part of if you go back through every NBA champion for the last 50 years, I'm guessing that there are a majority of those NBA championships were won not necessarily because a key player was injured on another team, but it certainly helped the cause of the team that won the championship. So I think you can certainly make the case that Boston was helped, enabled by the fact that they just ran into all these teams that had major to semi-major injuries. But as you said, you can only play who's put in front of you. And Boston did that. I think there's no doubt that the Mavericks were a legitimate finals opponent. There wasn't a lot of talk coming into the finals of the Mavs are frauds. They shouldn't be here. They're not worthy of being an NBA finals team. There was none of that. I mean, I would say it was probably close to a 50-50 split in terms of experts and what people thought in terms of how this series was going to go. So anybody who retrospectively says, well, everybody agreed that Dallas was an inferior finals team, I don't think anybody really felt that coming in. It's easy to look back on it and change your perception now that you have the result in front of you. Yeah. Right.
Revisionist history is easy when you see the result, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know. It's just Boston, all the statistics, everything that you could point to on an empirical level, all point to Boston being the best team in the NBA this year and one of the best teams in the history of the game. And I'm not sure I completely agree with all of that, but it's hard to argue statistically over the space of they played 100 games that's a big enough sample size to tell you that this team is pretty good. And I think, look, the trades that they made last summer, first to get Porzingis, we trade Marcus Smart out, and then they also got back 2 first-round picks from Memphis in addition to that, which is when you talk about a fleecing. But that trade starts it, and then as you get rid of Marcus Smart and you lose that defensive guy, that fire hydrant, that guy who's tough, can play in the post and body with guys, or you can lock down people on the perimeter, you end up replacing Marcus Smart with a guy who is at worst his equal defensively, and I would argue probably better than Marcus Smart on the defensive end of the floor. And then from an offensive standpoint, clearly an upgrade over Marcus Smart, especially in terms of just
Yeah.
understanding in the pecking order kind of where he fit. And so you got to give Boston credit for those two moves. I think the consensus around the Porzingis trade was a lot more mixed. The consensus around the Drew Holiday trade was 100% slam dunk like that. If Holiday stays healthy, that is a fantastic move. And I mean, you can argue that as good as Holiday was in the finals, that he could have easily been the MVP. And he was critically important to their regular season. He was critically important to their postseason. He was critically important in winning the NBA Finals. And look, Holiday shoots 42% from three. Kyrie and Luka shoot 29 and 27% respectively. Hard to win when that's the case. Hard to win.
Yep. I agree. So I think that basically puts a bow on the 2024 NBA 23-24 NBA season, Mike. And here we are in a week from now. We have the NBA draft.
Got a lot of draft. You got a lot of draft thoughts.
I've got zero draft thoughts. Zero. I've done
The
those.
NBA draft, I think maybe of any. I was thinking about this the other day. Probably of any event that has been at one time super important to me, or extremely compelling, or there's no way I'm going to miss this on TV. The NBA draft ranked up pretty high for me. And now, like, I don't know any of these guys between the foreign guys who, unless you want to go and watch on YouTube and try to do a deep dive study on them, which I don't think I'm going to be doing that. You don't know anything about those guys. Then you start talking about the other guys at the top of the draft. Maybe there are people who went to college for 1 year, and it's, again, we've talked about college basketball numerous times. It's more and more difficult to follow. You're kind of following the uniforms as opposed to the actual players inside the uniforms because of the movement with the transfer portal and everything else. So it's just, from a draft standpoint, my level of interest is probably as low as it's ever been, just because I don't really know the guys at the top of the draft. Whereas you go back 15, 20 years ago, and everybody's coming out of college, having played at least 3 years of college basketball, and you know those players. So when a name is called, or when they're debating between taking this guy or that guy, or you got Jay Billis is best available, you can kind of have your thoughts and opinions. I'm going to have very, 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 very few thoughts and opinions on this year's NBA draft because the guys are just so much less known than the previous generation of players coming into the NBA. I don't know how you feel about it, but man, it's just, it does, the event that used to be so huge for me, and now it's kind of like, I mean, I'll watch it as long as I don't have something else going on. But if I have something else going on,
You're not seeking it out.
I'll probably just check my phone and see who made the last pick.
Yeah.
Because again, I just don't know anybody.
I watch the NFL draft, Mike. That's the only draft I watch now. That's what I'm going to say. Like I'll probably.
Do you know any guys? You don't know any guys in the NFL draft, do you? I mean, obviously you know some, but I'm saying.
Oh no, I watch.
You're not,
I watch way more college football than I do college basketball, Mike.
but you know all these guys. You know the obscure offensive guard from Tennessee or whatever.
I know the quarterbacks. I know the wide receivers. I know the running backs. I know the defensive backs. I kind of have a general idea on those those players. And you know, I will be honest though. The last 2 years, I haven't known them as well because we're not picking at the top of the draft anymore, the Browns. So
True.
I haven't had to know them. Yeah. So here's what I'm gonna say, Mike, and I guess this is where unless you have something else you want to talk about. I don't have enough stake in the game to pay attention to the NBA draft too much anymore because I don't know these guys. Like, I think obviously there's intrigue to know where Bronny's going to end up. It is kind of intrigue. That's probably the most intriguing piece of this whole draft. where is Bronny going to get drafted to?
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Like, who's taking him? Are the Cavs going to take him at 22, even though he refused to do a workout? Are like, what's going to happen? All right, that's the pick. Now, we're not going to be able to react to the NBA draft next week, Mike, because
We're gonna do our draft preview.
well, we're not. I'm not going to be in town, man. I'm not going to be
I'm gonna
here.
do. I'm gonna
You're
do
gonna,
after I do all my research. I'm gonna do the draft. My
yeah, you might
draft.
do it. I'm gonna be in Virginia, or I'm in DC. I'm gonna be in the nation's capital on Tuesday next week. So there's not gonna be there's no gonna Jason's not gonna be on the NBA pod next week, nor the interview pod next week. So
All right, there you go.
Mike
Okay,
Mike
can I
might
ask you a question?
Mike might have
Bronny
to
related
reach out
question.
to Paul Biancar
Somebody,
or someone.
somebody,
Go
somebody.
ahead.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, Bronny question. I'm gonna give you. I got to throw a wild
No,
card
we
in
were gonna
here.
make this quick tonight, Mike. Come on.
All right, this is a wild card question. It won't take too long. Bronny potential landing spots in the draft. You tell me
Phoenix and
which of
LA.
these.
Phoenix and LA.
You tell
Those
me.
are
You tell me. You tell me which of these is the most likely. Okay, you tell me which one of these. If you're betting on one of these draft slots being Bronny, tell me which one you think is the most likely. Number 17 to the Los Angeles Lakers. Number 20 to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Number, I'm going to say,
he's going he's
number 54 to the Boston Celtics. Number 55 to the Los Angeles Lakers. Which of those is the most likely scenario?
do the Cavs have a second round pick, don't they?
I'm looking. I don't think they do. I don't
So
believe they do.
their only pick is at 20.
Their only pick is at 20.
I don't think he can be taken in the first round, Mike.
All right. Look, I'm asking you. I'm not telling you what the answer is. I'm
But
asking you.
I think that
What's your opinion?
here's what I'm gonna say. I think he's gonna probably go at 50. When do the Phoenix Suns have a pick?
Phoenix Suns have the number 22 pick in the first round.
What about in the second round?
Second round, they do not have a pick in the second round.
I think he goes to Phoenix at 22.
Really? I think it's the Lakers. Probably not at 17. There's no way that if Bronny is there at 55, there is no way the Lakers pass on him. If they pass on him, I would be completely stunned. Now I guess
someone will take him before then because they know the Lakers want him. They'll try to leverage that or something.
That's why I threw Boston in at 54. That would be talk about Celtics Lakers rivalry. Boston takes Bronny at 54. It's out of spite for the Lakers. I would love to see that in all honesty. I think it'd be hilarious if Boston took him at 54. That would be pretty
Phoenix,
good.
Mike. I'm going Phoenix. Phoenix.
All right. That's fair. That's fair. Just out of curiosity, I'm going to ask you one last question.
Okay, Mike.
Okay. In the second round of the NBA draft, how many picks are with the same team that have not been dealt to someone else? So the team that is making that draft pick is actually picking in the slot. No, I don't want to know. I don't want to know the one team. How many draft slots or how many teams have their own second round pick in this draft?
Oh God. 5.
Not bad. Your picks are the San Antonio Spurs at number 36, the Miami Heat at 43, the Sacramento Kings at 45, and the Orlando Magic at 47.
So
Four.
4.
So that was a pretty good guess. Four. Every other second
Well,
round pick
the way you made it
has
sounded
been
made it
traded.
sound was ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, that is ridiculous. Second round picks, I still don't understand the fascination with second round picks. Why teams value them at all? I mean, I know you can occasionally find a Steve Nash or a Nikola Jokic in the second round, so I guess maybe that's why they're considered to be valuable. But the percentage of hitting on those picks is so infinitesimal that I just don't understand why they're that valuable. But anyway, let's put it this way. Here's what I'll say. The Cavs pick at number 20, if Bronny is still there, is going to be a very, very intriguing 2 or 3 minutes while you're waiting to see whether or not the Cavs are going to pick him. And then I think subsequently, every time, the next two times when the Lakers come up,
oh,
well, I guess the Lakers will
draft's
have
on
already had it
Thursday, isn't
17.
it?
So
Draft is on Thursday next week, right?
Thursday. Yep,
Oh
Thursday.
well,
So
if okay, so I will be home Wednesday. I will be getting home Wednesday night. So I'm gonna be home from Wednesday night until Sunday before we go up to Maine. So we're going to Virginia and then going up to Maine. So if the Cavs draft Bronny on Thursday night, we're doing a podcast. If Bronny
all
gets
right.
drafted in the first round, we're doing a podcast about what that means for LeBron. Does that sound
All
good?
right. That
Is that
sounds like a
fair?
plan.
Is that fair?
Yeah,
Fair deal.
that's fair. That's fair.
All right.
All right, let's leave it there. We've talked about enough different topics than we said we were going to stick with the NBA Finals. So, congratulations to the Boston Celtics. Despite our rooting against them, they were able to get it done. Congratulations to Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, Joe Mazzulla. They got it done. Their path
Yeah.
wasn't the hardest one. There were a lot of things that broke their way. But as you said, you still got to get it done. And winning a championship is hard. It's hard no matter who you got to play, no matter where you got to play. And they did it. So congratulations to the Boston Celtics. And now we are looking forward to the NBA draft and the silly season. And there'll be lots to talk about, especially here in Cleveland, speculating about what is going to happen next with the Cavs. And so we'll see if Donovan Mitchell resigns and where we go from there. So at this point, we will end the NBA Finals pod, and we appreciate you listening. And we will catch you on our next episode. Thanks.